It's your girl, Lady TKG, and I just want to thank you for coming to hang with me, the not so cool kid. And normally I do not start my podcast that way, but someone suggested it, and I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. So let's get into it. Let's go. Let's get it. And this week, we will be talking about the self awareness onion. Now, I heard this by listening to an audiobook. I can't say the name because it's very vulgar, but I will list the details in the description below. But when I heard this term, I was kind of confused at first. I was like, the self-awareness onion, and then I continued to listen, and then it made more sense. So what is the self-awareness onion? And honestly, the concept is very simple. So self-awareness, the journey of self awareness and understanding more of who you are, is compared to an onion. Just like an onion, self awareness has many levels. And as you peel back these many levels, there is at any moment and instance that you could just burst out in tears. And when the author went over this, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. He went on to say that there's levels to this. And first, I'm going to give you the different levels, and I'm going to try to give you an explanation or an example so you understand what I mean. And I'm going to wait to the end to give you the example so you can see how it all ties together, just like he did. But my brain works a little different, so it took me a while to get it. But hopefully I can explain it to someone else that they can just get it like right off. So what type of levels are there? So he explained that there are 3 levels. The first level is just simply understanding how we feel. A lot of people don't even try with this level. A lot of people don't care how they really feel or haven't examined how they feel because they're too busy worried about how other people feel about them. But level 1, how do you truly feel about something? How do you feel about your life? How do you feel about your job? How do you feel about the situation, this whatever predicament? How do you feel? And a lot of us doesn't really go deep into how we feel on an everyday basis. And I've used this example before, but mothers is a good example of neglecting even that first level of how they feel. So level 1, understanding how you feel. Okay, and level 2. Level 2, it gets a little deeper, and this is kind of what I hint on in my shadow work questions I drop each week. It is the ability to ask why we feel that way. So layer number 1, we understand our feeling. Layer number 2, now we have to understand, well, why is it that you feel that way? What has brought you to this conclusion of feeling that way? And lastly, it is, how does those emotions, how you feel, tie into those personal boundaries? Like, why do you have those standards? What is uplifting those standards? Where did you understand the standards from? Because most likely the reason why we feel a certain way about something is that we have an internal unconscious standard that has come from our environment, people around us, things that we've learned, things that we have experienced. And a lot of times we compare and judge each of those things based on those facts. And when he broke down his example, like I said, at first I didn't quite get it, but I started to put it in terms of my life and my personal shadow work experience. So for me, I am going to examine, I guess, the loneliness, feeling of loneliness. Because one of the things that I've had to constantly, or I see the lesson that I've had to learn, is when I pour so much into people, and then when I feel like, oh, it's time for them to pour into me, it's like they're not there, and then I start going into despair and feeling all this way. But then, like human nature, you start blaming the other parties. You don't really see or understand that maybe you have a lot to do with that. Maybe your mind frame, how you're thinking, has a lot to do with that. So let's go back over to level 1. How do I feel? Well, I felt betrayed. I felt hurt. I felt left, left alone. I felt rejected. Okay, level 2. Why do I feel rejected? Well, I feel rejected because they didn't give me the same energy that I gave them. They didn't, reciprocate Now, it's not like I was expecting it in the same way, but I was expecting something. Well, aha. You were expecting something. But why were you expecting that? And that's when we get to level 3. What has happened within your life that you expect that? Well, my values of friendship. If I'm there for you, I'm hoping that you're there for me too. And in a sense, everyone's like, oh yeah, that should be right. But who says that should be right? Because we may have built up an expectation, or at least I know I've built up an expectation for people to be there when they didn't really have the energy, the ability to be there for me. But because I've built up an expectation based on the standard of friendship, my own standard, I was letting myself down and pretty much hurting myself. But that's self-awareness. That's understanding who you are, why you react to certain things, and then coming back to yourself like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I've been holding people to a standard that they may not have for friendship. I am pretty much hurting myself. Okay, well, let me step back and say, hey, are you being a good enough friend to yourself? Let's look at yourself. Are you being a good enough friend to yourself? Because you're looking for friendship in other people, but have you fulfilled those certain things within you so you don't have to look for somewhere else? That is all a part of self-awareness. And guess what? At any given moment, every single time I learn something new, I've learned a different thing about myself. I understand that, hey, that is something I need to grow on, something I need to evolve from. Guess what I do? I will cry. I may cry in happiness, cry in understanding, cry in knowing. But he's completely right. The more you dig deep in these levels, the more you're going to be comfortable with who you are, yourself, and honestly comfortable with other people. You're not expecting anything because you understand that, hey, they may have not met my standards of it, but they may be meeting their standards of it. And guess what? I can move accordingly. Because if I don't like how I feel and I've examined how I feel, well, maybe I need to be around other people that feel the same way. But a lot of people don't get past level 1. They don't even be honest with themselves on how they feel about something. So today, I encourage you, do the shadow work. I always drop questions. I drop questions weekly because I want people to actually take that seriously, because there's a lot of times we sit in rooms with people we're supposed to have certain conversations with, and we don't. There's a lot of times that we sit in a room alone and we're supposed to have conversations with ourselves, and we don't. And that's one thing I'm passionate about. Because I feel if more people do that work on the inside, the emotions, the love they give on the outside, it's going to be even easier because you've taken the time to love yourself. But that's all I got for y'all today. I just want you to think about that. The self-awareness onion, that will never leave my mind. That is something that I have been touched with, and I will say, I'm going to continue to think about that, use that, and take those 3 levels and work through any and every problem. But I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, because after all, those are the only ones that are allowed.